during class on Tuesday, you had on the board the four different psychotheories that we've gone through so far, or counseling theories, I should say. And it was psychodynamic, humanistic, cognitive, and behavioral. Very quick summary on those. Psychodynamics really kind of alienates the counselor from the patient, and it deals with trying to get to the root of the issues. What's causing you to feel the way you're feeling, and going back through the history of your life. Humanistic is all about the relationships, building a relationship with the client, and kind of feeling like the client has a lot of the answers already inside them. They just have to figure out how to access those answers. Cognitive comes to kind of thought manipulation and trying to change the way that we think about things and how we approach life. And then behavioral is, changing behaviors. It's just behavior modification. And as I've talked about in my last evaluations, I haven't really liked how a lot of them worked. The psychodynamic just kind of deals a lot with, it's just very impersonal. There's no relationship building. And it just wasn't the best one for me. For some weird reason, I just didn't like it. Behavioral, I'm not a fan of just behavior modification. We need to change the heart. Cognitive therapy, we get closer, but we're really at that point just changing thoughts. But we have some good thoughts there still, our good ideas there, where we say, Jesus is strong, and so therefore I can be trusting and know that he is going to protect me. Where humanistic is all about the relationship, and there's not a whole lot of practices in humanistic in trying to help people overcome what they're dealing with, but it's dealing a lot with the relationships and actually trying to help the person find the answers themselves, it feels like. And also I feel like you can use some of the psychodynamic and find those root causes again. And so I was seeing these four up there on the board, and I had this thought, and I know some people don't feel like eclectic counselors are as effective as people who are devoted to one practice who use a few tidbits from other places. Yet I tend to be drawn towards the eclectic type of counselor because I feel like there's value in all of the practices, and the way that they were portrayed on the whiteboard on Tuesday seemed to be in a fluid and almost biblical sort of sense way of counseling. If we used all four of those practices and we started at psychodynamic therapy, we started there, and then we ended up at behavioral modification or behavior therapy, and we went on that line that was drawn, I honestly felt like that would be a very effective type of counseling. Where if we look at psychodynamic, how do we relate this to the Bible? How do we relate this to how God is? Well, God starts off in the Bible almost kind of being like this distant. Well, actually, he starts off being very close. Garden Eden. As soon as we fall and we actually need counseling, God starts off as this kind of aloof and distant character, almost, it feels like. But he knows us. He knows what's deep inside our hearts. He knows what's caused everything. But he's not super personal all the time. And then there's all these just rules set in place, and that's just basically ultimate behavior modification. At least that's how the Pharisees took it, because Pharisees weren't the most genius people in the world. But then we get to the humanistic, which is more about the relationship. So we start with figuring out what is the root cause, finding the heart of the person. And then we go to the humanistic side, building the relationships. So Jesus knows us, and he cares about us. Well, God. We'll go with God for this one. But then Jesus comes in, and he has that personal relationship. He has that relationship with 12 of the disciples. And he's constantly being hands-on, helping people. And it's not so much thought or behavioral modification as he is just loving people and letting them come to him because they see that he is someone worth following. But then we get into more of the Romans, where we side when Jesus leaves, and we get to that cognitive side of the therapy. Do not be conformed to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, which kind of gets into that cognitive style of therapy where we are changing the way that we think about stuff. We're changing it to be Christ-centered. We're changing it to be God-centered. And then we go to behavioral, where James talks a lot about, the tongue can't be tamed, and we need to try to at least rein it in a little bit. That way we're not sinning and being angry and just, torquing a bunch of people off. And so I see this kind of biblical progression with these therapies. And so I just saw that. I was like, wow, this seems like a very good way to do therapy. We start off by getting to know what's going on in the person's life. Then we build that relationship, that friendship in the humanistic side. And then from there, we start to work on the cognitive side where we start to get those thoughts changing, and by changing the thought patterns, then the behavior patterns follow suit. And it's like, as we're finding the heart of the issue, we're starting to build a relationship. As we're starting to build a relationship and the person's starting to find those answers on them by themselves, then they start to change their own thought processes. So starting at step 1, we do a little bit of step 2. We go to step 2 and it does a little bit of step 3, and it trickles down as we move from section to section in the therapy. And I thought that was really intriguing in class on Tuesday, and honestly that's all I really could have think about during that class period, because it just seemed very interesting to me and I wanted to pursue it further. So that's my evaluation for the week. Thank you.